So I just want to introduce myself. Everybody, I think, knows me. I think the only person who doesn't know me is Miriam. We kind of connected on email. So I'm Vuket Tran. I'm an emergency doctor and family doctor. And I'm also the founder and co-founder with the JP of the Canadian Physicians Pension Plan. I'll explain a little bit why we're in the Integris office. And so Integris is a product of Mr. JP Laporte. And this whole CPPP, Canadian Physicians Pension Plan, has a foundation based on the personal pension plan, which is what Integris does. Oh, we have, and so that's why we're in the office of Integris, but it's Integris and CPPP together. And so let me get introduced around the room. JP, do you want to?
Yeah, just I'm the treasurer of the CPPP. I'm also the CEO of Integris, and I'm a pension lawyer. So that's my background is 22 years as a lawyer specializing in pension law. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, I'll introduce Mr. Friedman at the back.
I'm Steve Friedman, pension facilitator for Canadian Physicians Pension Plan. So I was registered with the Ontario Securities Commission for 45 years, and I have my own dealership. And I love this. So this is what it makes so much sense. So this is what I'm involved.
And Stephen's our pension facilitator, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna maybe ask the people in the room to introduce themselves, but I want to recognize that there are people online as well. So we have Nick, who is, I don't know if you see him, Nick there is our director of financial planning. And so he's our guy and our go-to guy when we need help with financial planning with any of our members. We have Subash, who's actually in the room. He's our IT specialist. We have Naomi, Dr. Naomi Pliam, who's at home watching the podcast, not the podcast, but the recording from home because she couldn't attend. And we have Elena Hofstein. She's also, she's a estate lawyer. So thank you very much for those who are attending online. So how about I start in the room here? Christina, how about, Karina, sorry. Anesthesia, okay. At Lakewood Child, okay, thank you. Okay, great, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. And we have my good friend at the back. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for coming. What we want to do tonight is really just to make sure that we explain the CPPP properly, what the structure looks like and how this can help you in your financial wellness and security immediately and in the future. So the Canadian Physicians Pension Plan is a program that JP and we co-developed because we felt that there was a need in the market. And for those of you who know what I do, I also do podcasts about personal finance. And I've always been a big believer that physicians need a pension plan, and we need a solid pension plan to take care of our future, because otherwise we're just working and working without ever feeling like we have a good financial safety net. And so we came out with the structure of the Canadian Physicians Pension Plan. So what really is the pension plan? The pension plan is a registered pension plan with the CRA. So this is fully endorsed by the CRA. It's legitimate and registered, and it provides a solid, predictable retirement income during our retirement years, similar to what the public pension plans are like for example, the teacher's pension plan, the HOOP or OMERS pension plan. In addition to that, because the pension plan is structured in a way that uses our MPC to fund it, it now gets a lot of additional features, tax features that we're going to talk about today. So we did it because when I started practicing medicine, which is 2020, so 22 years now, I've always asked myself the question, like, why don't we have a pension plan? Like, we're sort of not employees, but we work for the state, but we're contractors to the state. And that's why we've never had that relationship of employer-employee to get a pension plan. So we've never had one. And we need something that protects our future, because as you mentioned rightly so, Suha, we don't get a lot of training in personal finance. So a lot of us are doing things here, there. We think we're doing the right thing. We're planning for the future. We invest in this and that, and we invest in and we try to really build our own investment and our own retirement plan. Some of us do it better than others, and some of us don't do it well at all. And so we needed something that was really secure, registered, and solid. And so that's why we did it. And when I met JP and I signed on to the PPP, that's when I learned about the PPP. I learned about the PPP maybe 5 years ago and didn't really delve into it until probably 2 years ago. And then when I signed on with the PPP, I said, JP, I'm really happy that I've got my PPP, but what about all the other doctors? How do we do this Canada-wide for all the other doctors? Like, I'm very happy I have mine, but a lot of my colleagues are in the same situation as I am. How do we do this? And so we devised this plan, and I'll let you know, when I got my letter from the CRI that says, you know, Dr. Vucatran, your Vucatran MPC is now registered for a pension plan. I can't tell you the amount of stress and peace that I felt immediately, because I knew that if I did this right, and all I have to do is follow a cookbook and contribute every year to this amount, I know that when I retire, I'll be taken care of. And that is very important, because I don't have to think about the ups and downs and what I need to do. Do I need to invest in stocks? Do I need to invest in crypto? Do I need to buy more real estate? What is it that I need to do? Okay, so welcome to the webinar. And you are Dr. Francis?
Yeah.
Welcome. I've just started. And so having that peace of mind was, I don't know how to express that. So I hope that we all get this type of feeling when we finally get our pension plan. So just to let you know about the Canadian Physicians Pension Plan, we decided to partner with the best in class. So Fidelity Investment and Fidelity Clearing is our custodian. So Fidelity is the biggest mutual fund company in the world, and they are our custodian. CI Financial is one of the biggest investment company in Canada. And what they do is we use them to invest in pension-like funds. Vector Global is another partner of ours. And Vector Global is the sponsor for the food tonight. So I want to make sure that I thank Vector Global for that. And Vector Global is a smaller portfolio management firm. And what they specialize is obviously in equities, but they also specialize in private equity. So things that we don't find on the stock market. And a lot of the pensions now, you will find that they invest in private equity as well. And we use Vector Global for that part of our portfolio. Industrial Alliance Financial Group are the actuaries behind the pension. And then we've got Integris Pension Management, which is JP, the CEO, and he's the one that is managing the pension plan, the personal pension plan, which will evolve into the Canadian pension plan, which we'll discuss in a minute. So this is, you get the highest level of creditor protection in Canada. A pension is protected from creditors that no other vehicle or financial vehicle allows. And even the RSP does not allow that type of creditor protection. So the CPPP is approved and regulated by the federal government of Canada and all provinces and territories. So this goes across Canada, all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. And we really try to do it for every Canadian physicians in Canada. So I'm going to let JP talk about the structure and the legal aspect of the pension plan itself.
Okay. So thank you.
And thanks for the people that are online as well. So I want to start with the Medical Professional Corporation, which all of you should have, hopefully. If you don't, you should get incorporated. But when you have your corporation, you can now, thanks to the employment-employee relationship you have with your own corporation, you're now eligible to join the CPPP. And when your corporation contributes money to the plan, those are all tax deductible at the corporate level. So the money doesn't have to go into salary to then contribute to an RSP, right? It goes straight from the corporation into the pension plan. It bypasses your own income. So you're not exposing a lot of income to high personal tax rates. It's going from a traditionally lower tax rate, the corporate tax rate, into a tax exempt entity, which is the pension plan. When you withdraw funds in retirement, that's when that money that hasn't been taxed yet now becomes taxable. But luckily, because this is a pension plan, even then, those funds are eligible for tax minimization techniques like income splitting with a spouse. So people have spouses. When you're taking money out of the plan, you can allocate some of that to the tax return of your spouse, assuming you have a spouse with a lower income. And then the couple ends up paying less tax overall. So there are ways to minimize taxes. Another one is if you decide to retire outside of Canada and you became a non-resident, then the tax, instead of being 53.5%, which is what most high earners in Ontario are paying, the top rate, it drops to 15%, 1.5, instead of 53, because Canada has signed tax treaties with about 100 different countries. And they said, whenever someone's collecting Canadian pension income, we will only tax it at 15%. So that's a nice way of reducing your tax when you're in retirement. So let's, unless there's any questions about what I just set up to this point in time. Yes. Oh, well, that's more of a, so there are different rules for OHIP, for Income Tax Act. There's a 153-day rule. OHIP, I don't think it's.
OHIP is 157.
57, so it depends on the program.
For the income tax itself, how much?
153, I think.
153.
Yeah.
We pay we have an income and we pay corporate taxes on that income. And then some part of the money that are left in the corporation.
No.
No.
You don't even pay the tax. It goes straight from, like, OHIP pays your company.
Yeah.
And before you pay taxes, you take some of that money and put in your pension plan.
So that money is not part of the corporate taxes. And this is today.
Yeah, it gives your corporation a tax break.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you have an RSP and you contribute to the RSP, you don't pay tax on that amount. Like, you can deduct it from your personal taxes. Here, it's a corporation that's doing it by putting money in the pension plan. It's the same principle.
I understand that, but I still pay corporate taxes for the money that I'm drawing for RSP. So
But this is different than the RSP, right?
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that I totally understand.
Sure.
Suppose I have an income of $200,000,
Mhm.
and that money comes into the corporation. And let's suppose I can put in a CPPP 50,000. So 200 minus 50,000, it will be 150,000 money left in the corporation that I'm going to pay corporate taxes on that money.
Unless you have other deductions like salary. Yeah. Yeah.
So that 50,000, I don't pay corporate taxes, I don't pay any other taxes on them.
Correct.
At the moment that I'm using them for the distribution.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why, and you'll see that it's not just the annual contribution. There are a whole bunch of deductions that don't exist with RSPs, that only exist in the pension world. And that's why this is such a powerful tax minimization tool.
And also you said that if I live in another country, I'm from Romania. So suppose I want to spend 6 months there and 6 months here on Italian. And you said I can withdraw money at the lower tax rate. What do you mean by that?
If you become a non-resident of Canada.
If I become a non-resident?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I decided to live there.
You
and I
find
come here to visit,
a beautiful villa in Bucharest or Constanza on the sea, and you live there all the time. You might come and visit, but you live there, you're no longer a resident of Canada. That's when this low tax rate, that's when the low tax rate kicks in.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Any people are on mute online, so I don't know if they have questions, but let's keep going. Top 10 highlights. Well, first of all, it's 5 physicians for physicians. We also have an advisory council of physicians, which Vu didn't mention, but helping us, guide us as we're unfurling this or unrolling this in Canada.
We can talk about that
After, yeah. We offer the largest corporate tax deductions possible under the Income Tax Act over a lifetime. There's no other solution under the Income Tax Act that will give you as many tax deductions for retirement than a PPP. Okay, nothing. So this is the top of the line product if you're trying to find as many deductions as possible, which most people who are highly taxed do. We offer 7 additional tax deductions that don't exist for someone using an RRSP, and we'll get into that. There's a possibility to transfer all of this wealth tax-free to your spouse and your children, if you have children, so long as they're on the payroll of your medical corporation. So for a lot of people, the kids might be going to school, but part-time, they're helping out with books and records, the website, other things that come with running a corporation. If they're on the payroll, they can be made members of the plan. And if something were to happen to you and your spouse, heaven forbid, instead of having half the money taxed away, which is what will happen, it doesn't get taxed under the PPP, under the CPPP. And we'll get into the details because that's a big one. And of course, if you're allowed to contribute more and money is growing tax sheltered inside the plan, then you're going to have more savings for retirement. That's just a mathematical certainty. We can even get life insurance as an asset class to beef up the returns of the pension plan using tax deductible dollars. So I won't get into that because we have some slides that deal with that later on. It's more flexible than other solutions like individual pension plan. You might have heard of the acronym IPP or multi-employer pension plan, MEP. You may or may not. There's some people out there that are talking about these solutions. Ours is better, and we have some tables to show that. We provide a wider range of investment options than under an RSP, and that's because of the law. The RSPs are governed by what are called the qualifying investment rules. So it's a laundry list of types of investments you're allowed to use, like stocks and bonds on the stock market, for example, mutual fund units. But with a pension plan, you can go beyond that into other asset classes. That's why Hoop and OMERS and all these multi-billion-dollar pension plans only have a small portion of their money in the public stock market. Most of their money now is in alternatives, right? Because they've gone beyond what everyone else is doing. Professional management, like we don't touch the money. It's the money managers that Vu was talking about. Very low investment fees because we were able to negotiate institutional pricing, even though none of you in the room warrant, you don't have enough money to get institutional pricing, but you do through us because of the group collective effort. So that's a big coup. And it's great for starting a long-term family pension if you have children that eventually are going to get older and can be put on the payroll. So the CPPP is really for the physician and your family. It's not for your patients. You do enough for your patients or your staff, this is for you. Because it's really time for the physicians across the country to start caring about themselves. They do enough for the rest of the general public. Because of everything I've talked about so far, given that the law allows for a larger contribution room under the CPPP than other solutions, over time, this is a heuristic graph. Over time, if you're allowed to put more money and it's all growing at the same rate of return, right? There's no difference in what you're investing in. Well, you're going to end up with a lot more money. That's just, like I said, it's basic math. So let's talk a little bit about the intergenerational wealth transfer, because it's probably the most powerful tax planning solution that's unique to pensions. It's great to have an RSP, and if you pass away, you're allowed to do a rollover to a spouse. No tax on death goes to the spouse. But what happens when both pass away at the same time? Well, we have what's called a deemed disposition. This is a taxable event. The CRA, the Income Tax Act, assumes that you sold everything at fair market value the day before you died, and now your estate has got a big tax bill. That's how the taxman gets you. And this applies to RSPs, it applies to RIFs, it applies to shares of your private company. There's no real hiding. You can buy insurance and use the insurance money to pay off the taxman, or you can do a pension and create surplus. So what's amazing with pension rules is that the money is put in a pension fund that's tax exempt, and it's there to make sure there's enough money to pay you a pension. However, if you die, let's say you die with your spouse, the pension plan has done its job. It was promising you a pension for the rest of your life. Well, your life was cut short. So the pension plan says, okay, well, I've done my part. I don't have to pay any more pensions. So all the money that's left behind is called pension surplus. Well, if the children are part of the plan, now they just get all that surplus. See, we don't have a deemed disposition. We don't have to give half to the government. It just stays inside the plan and continues to be tax exempt for the benefit of the children.
That's the important point. The important point is that inside the pension, you circumvent the deemed disposition problem.
Yeah, so I give the analogy that I always give in these videos. This guy, Jeff, I won't give his last name, but Jeff came to us with an individual pension plan, and he needed to upgrade it to a personal pension plan for technical reasons. And he had $8 million in his pension fund. So I said, Jeff, you're 73 years old. You're collecting a pension. You know that if you die tomorrow, given that you don't have a spouse, there's no rollover, the government's going to take $4 million. Right? Deemed disposition. He goes, yeah. So I said, well, Jeff, don't you have any kids that are working in the family business? It's because he's not a doctor. He runs a real estate investment company. And his kids are adults. They're in their 50s. So why aren't your kids part of your pension plan? He goes, well, no one told me. So I said, well, you know, if you add your kids to the plan and you pass away tomorrow, the full 8 million will continue to stay in the plan as surplus. You're not giving 4 million to the government. You're giving it to your kids instead. And he almost cried. He said, I'm 73 years old. My lawyer never told me. My accountant never told me. The actuary that set up this plan didn't tell me. My financial advisor didn't tell me. Why am I finding this out at 73? I could have had a stroke yesterday. Ignorance of the law is very costly. So, as I said, when a member passes away, the assets in the pension plan that were earmarked to pay the pension become surplus, and the surplus can stay in the fund as long as there are other plan members, like the kids. In fact, the kids can have kids, and they can join the plan, and this could go on forever.
Enjoying the plan is a simple sort of when you sign up with you that some process with the annual fees or just simplified process.
They have to join the plan as a plan member.
Yeah.
So there are fees associated with the plan membership. But to be a member, you need to have a T4.
You need to be employed.
They need to be employee of your corporation.
Now, they don't have to be employees forever. They could be employees for 2-3 years, part-time, minimum wage. And if they terminate, They say, you know, Dad, I'm done with your medical corporation. I want to move to California and work at Apple or wherever. They can terminate. And the only thing they need to do is we're going to give them a piece of paper saying, what do you want to do with your pension money? Your tiny little pension money, because they've only been there minimum wage 2 years, right? So they have a tiny entitlement. If they check off the box that says, I want a deferred pension, keep my money with Dad's money, then should something happen to you, they get the bonus, they get everything, because they have a right to monies in that account.
This portfolio, you don't have any working within the company and ask me what happens to the principal amount, is that what would happen in that case, the government does get everything?
If the,
So
if
what
the-
he's asking is,
sorry.
you have the pension plan.
yeah,
But you haven't had time to set the children up.
oh, well, it goes to the spouse. If you have a spouse, there's a rollover to the spouse. If you don't have a spouse, or the spouse dies in the same accident or whatever, then it goes to your designated beneficiaries on record. So when we sign you up, we ask you, who do you want your money to go to and what percentage? You can also even add a hospital if you want, or a charitable foundation as a beneficiary. So given that there's no spouse, we look at that and we pay off the people that you've told us to pay it to. So it stays in the family. Yeah, please.
That same as trustee, but when I filled out the application, there was like, I got confused, there's beneficiaries and then there's trustees.
Completely different.
Okay.
Yeah, the trustees are the people that are supposed to hang on to the money for the pension plan. Because in order to protect that money from creditors, you have to create a trust. Right? It's a pension trust, so you need trustees. But those three individuals are completely different from the beneficiaries, which normally would be children or family members. It could, people could wear both hats. It's possible technically to be a child and be asked to be a trustee, but
Yeah, so trustee mean that they're the one that look after the safeguard of the fund, but they are not beneficiaries.
yeah,
Their work is to safeguard the money.
Yeah.
The beneficiaries are the people who will receive the money. But JP said they could be both, right?
technically
My
possible.
kid, my son or my wife could also be beneficiary, but she also could be the trustee looking after the fund.
So I'm
But
not sure which one I do or how, like, I didn't quite understand it the way it's explained now.
okay, so make sure that
Oh, yeah. Well, Gail is the one in charge of that.
make sure that we connect with Gail.
Yeah.
And then you fully understand who looks after the safeguard of the money and who are the people who actually get the money.
Yep. So, like I said, just to recap, if you have an RSP and you were lucky enough to, or not lucky enough, you end up by the time you retire with $3 million in it, just illustration, and you pass away and you're with your spouse, there's no rollover possible, then about half goes to the government. But if you have it in a CPPP instead, if your children are part of the plan, then they get the full 3 million. So it's a choice you have to make, but that's how the law works. So really, what's the number one way to retain more of our money? Well, it's to protect it from taxation, because taxation is the largest, biggest destroyer of wealth. You know, when you're taxed at 53.5%, you're like on a treadmill, working, and then more than half the money is disappearing all the time. So it's hard to see the money accumulate.
And what people don't realize is the most tax you'll ever pay is the day after your death. But your family and your state will lose half of it, right? So we all work very hard, and we all work very hard for our family and our children, but then half of it goes to CRA or the nice lady working at the counter at CRA, right? So, and so taxation is really the biggest wealth destroyer, and we have to be really careful with our taxes.
So what are some solutions? Well, we have tax shelter vehicle, primary residence, your home. When you sell it, there's no tax
Yet,
yet. That might change, but yet,
you
yeah,
give Justin a few more years and he'll get into that.
I'm no politics here. The RSP we talked about. TFSA, tax-free savings account, great tool, except that the annual limit is $6,000. So what are you going to do with that? It's like Vegas money, play money. Pensions, that's what we're talking about. And whole life insurance. Well, whole life, permanent life. We should have put permanent life, but whole life. The problem is that 98% of us Canadians are using the RSP because that's all we've been told. No one's ever given you a crash course on pensions, even though pensions are a lot older than RSPs. Pensions date back to 1917 in the Income Tax Act. RSPs only came about in 1957. So 40 years later. So what are the disadvantages of the RSP? Well, we know that it's not really tax efficient for high income earners because the limit is too low. And it's not, well, therefore, it's not really efficient for physicians. It's also the death problem that we talked about, this deemed disposition. So the solution is simply to build your own pension plan, and the law allows for it. So that's why we're here. That's why we exist. And that's why more and more professionals are doing this. You know, pension plans have been around for a long time. Healthcare of Ontario, the nurses have a true pension plan. Why can't the doctors have one? How crazy is that? The teachers have one. The municipal employees have one.
So our colleague at the back was a closet teacher.
Ah, okay.
You guys go teach you.
Okay.
Switch to Korean now.
So you gave up a pension, but now you're going to have one again. So you're okay.
Yeah.
And of course, us now. And, you know, it's really unfair, but under the Income Tax Act, there are two different provisions that deal with retirement that we care about. One is the RSP, Section 146, which gives you one deduction, your annual contribution. And then there's Section 147.1, which deals with registered pension plans like the PPP and the CPPP. And it gives you 7, actually, I don't have enough fingers. So 7 tax deductions. It's not fair. That's how the law works. And again, knowledge of the law is how you can create wealth for yourself. So we're talking about a pension for typically one person, but it could be spouse, if the spouse is on the payroll, children. The employer is your medical professional corporation. You can start at any age, but you have to do it before 71. I see a lot of very young faces around the room, so I'm not too worried, but you know, people tend to procrastinate and wait. Oh, well, I'll start next year. Well, you have till 71 to get going. And the PPP is a building block of the Canadian Physicians Pension Plan, which is why we're here today. So let me explain that. Just before I kind of put the two together, let me just go through a couple of points about the personal pension plan. So we've already said that all the contributions are tax deductible to the corporation, all 7 deduction, not just the annual contribution. All the expenses relating to the management of the plan, like investment management fees, tax deductible in a pension plan, whereas they're not in an RSP. Well, that's a big difference. Over time, makes a huge difference. Of course, everything inside the plan grows tax sheltered. We're allowed to do what are called top-up contributions. In technical legal pension jargon, they're called special payments, but really they're top-up, they're additional contributions if the rate of return inside the pension plan isn't hitting a prescribed level, which is 7.5%. So if you don't like to take any risks whatsoever, and you say, you know what, I don't trust the markets, I want to go in guaranteed income certificates, right, where I can't lose any money. Well, if you do that, you'll be lucky if you earn 2 or 3%. So you're nowhere near the 7.5%, which means that we'll be able to tell you, oh, you can throw in another $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 this year and write that off as well. Because you were supposed to earn 7.5%, you only earn 2% with your GIC. So now the law allows your company to take more money that hasn't been taxed yet, like the 50,000, and redirect it into your own pension plan. I mean, that's like manufacturing contribution room. And the beauty of this, that particular strategy is, imagine if, I don't know, China decides to invade Taiwan and the stock market loses 50% of its value in one day. Well, You're in GICs. You haven't learned a penny. You haven't lost a penny. Now's the time to go buy shares. When everyone else lost their shirt, I mean, this sounds really crass, but when everyone else has lost 50%, that's when you sell your GICs and say, okay, now I can buy. I'm going to buy low and then sell high whenever it's time to sell.
Right, but when you sell high, the capital gains that you made is not taxed.
Yeah, because it's a pension plan
So this is buying low, selling high.
and pay no tax.
And pay no tax. Now, but also there's something you didn't mention. So if you were inside an RSP and the same scenario happened, China attacks Taiwan, and the market drops 50%. If you were an RSP, you lost 50%, and there's nothing you can do. You just wait it out. In a pension plan, you can now do special payments. So you lost 50%, you say, oh, I've got a pension shortfall here.
That's if you weren't in GICs to
That's if I
start.
wasn't in GIC.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, pension shortfall, I need to make up for that pension. So now your corporation can put even more money, get the tax contribution.
You don't have to if you don't want to.
Right, but you could,
If you have the cash and you don't want to pay taxes, you can redirect it through special payments. Yeah.
right, and you do that, and you buy it at 50% discount. And then when the market goes up, you sell, but when you sell, you make capital gains, which are not taxed. So you can't do that type of thing inside an RSP.
No, you can just pray. Past service contribution is if some of you have been collecting a salary from your own medical professional corporation over the past few years, we can retroactively pick up those years and create another corporate tax deduction. That's called a past service contribution. So if you're all doing dividends, 100% dividends, stop and start taking some salary.
So I'll give you an example what that means. I created my pension plan in 2020. But I incorporated in 2012. So I've been working for 8 years and I paid myself a salary, but I only created my pension in 2020. So now I could buy back all the previous year's contribution in 2020. And all those contributions that I made in 2020, I get a tax.
Are you at liberty to share what you got?
I put in 195,000.
So that's an extra deduction on top of the annual contribution.
That year in 2020, I put in 37,000. And then I bought back all the previous years, which was 195. So in total, in 2020, my corporation contributed 220 something thousand.
So you didn't pay a lot of tax that year, right?
No,
So do you have to use that credit right away when
No.
you need it, or you can do it over time?
no.
You can do it when you have the extra income
You have room.
and you're looking for deductions. You can,
Yeah.
and you have 15 years to amortize that amount.
Yeah, you don't have to do it also.
Yeah, it's
You
complete.
could have the room sitting there.
We also have pension income splitting with a spouse before age 65. The law in Canada says that you have to be 65 to split your RIF income with a spouse. Not so with us. With us, because it's a pension plan and not an RSP, we can do it at any age. So if you want to start splitting your pension income at 55, 60, 62, no problem.
So I'll let my colleague at the back know. I plan to retire at age 55. I'm in. So if I retire at age 55 and I start, withdrawing from the pension, I can income split with Susan. Right, at age 55, I don't have to wait 65.
So 25 more years to go, right?
25, no.
He looks like he's 18, eh? Yeah. So you can also do accelerated funding if you want to retire early. When I say retire, I don't mean hang up your stethoscope. I mean, stop taking a salary from your corporation and turn on the pension. You're still working, still billing OHIP, still collecting dividends because you're a shareholder of your own company. So your standard of living doesn't change. But by triggering early retirement, quote unquote, we're able to create additional tax deductions within your corporation. And some of these are extremely large. In fact, the largest accelerated funding that we've seen was $2.1 million of tax write-off for the company for just a one-time event.
So I'll give you a personal example. I don't have 2.1 million. It's not going to happen. But so
I don't either.
when I set up the plan, it was I was planning to retire at age 65, right? But I just said to you guys, I plan to retire at age 55, retire at age 55. So I've got 10 years of shortfall. My pension is shortfall by 10 years. So this terminal funding, what it means is that I can now use 10 years of contribution that at age 55, I can put one lump sum if I wanted to, or I can amortize it over 15 years. But should I do that, then in my case, in my scenario, in my illustration, it comes out to about 550,000. Right? So at age 55, I could, if I had the money,
Or you could borrow the money.
or I could borrow the money, or beg on the street, something, but I could put 550,000 in at age 55. And that would make up for the gap. And that 550 would be tax deductible, of course, to the corporate income. The beautiful thing is I start taking a pension, so I have regular payments. But I decide not to retire. I decide to work whenever I want, and I just want to do 2 shifts a week. Or maybe I'll come and work for you at your hospital, and I'll just do 1 week out of 4, right? So something like that. So I'm still gonna make OHIP money. And the money that goes, OHIP money that goes to my corporation, I can't take it out as a T4 anymore because I'm officially drawing a pension. But because I'm also employee and employer and also shareholder of my company, if I need money and I want to travel to Cuba, wherever, and take a great vacation, then I take extra money out as dividend, not as T4. So I can eat my cake and have it too. And I could do FIRE early. So you guys heard of the FIRE movement? So what is FIRE?
Was it financial independence, retire early?
Yes, but my version of FIRE is financially independent, recreational employment. So I'm gonna work whenever and however I want to work. So the terminal funding is very powerful because I can decide at age 55, I want to do FIRE. And like you said, I'm not gonna retire my stethoscope, I just want to work less. And I want to work whenever I want to work.
Yeah.
But I don't have to worry about the monthly cash flow coming in because I've got a steady pension money coming,
It helps with burnout.
and it helps with.
Any questions about it? I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you. So any questions? No? Okay. Oh,
I have a question regarding salary. How much salary we need to pay in order to be eligible for this pension plan, and how much money it needs to be?
yeah. So there's no minimum, but obviously your contributions to the plan are a percentage of your salary. So if you tell me I'm only willing to pay myself $10 a year in salary, the contribution will be $1. So you'll go nowhere. So you have to have a salary that will give you good contributions. The maximum this year is $171,000. But we have a lot of people who take 100,000, they take 80,000, they take 70,000. So it's all over the map. It's just always yeah, the contributions are a percentage of the salary. It depends on your age, and it depends on whether you're buying back past service. It will depend if you have special payments. So there's all kinds of factors, but it starts at 18% when you're young, and then it goes up to about 29% when you're around 64.
So again, just to give you a personal example. So RSP is always 18%, right? It doesn't move. It's 18% of last year's salary. That's RSP. So in my case, I did my PPP in 2020, like I said, 2 years ago. And by the time I just made my contribution, forget about the past service, just that yearly contribution, it came out to about 21-point-something%. Next year is a little bit more, and
every year goes up.
and then every year it goes up. And I think the maximum GP, if I remember,
29%.
29%. So everybody stays at 18 with RSP. With the pension, as you grow older, your percentage grows.
Which means more money working for you, more deductions, more savings. That's why there's a gap that develops over time. This is the RSP, it's the CPPP, and this is the RSP curve over time, assuming the exact same rate of return. We're not taking extra risks, but because we're allowed to put more in, mathematically, we're going to have more money at the end.
Let's say we are paying that, and after 5 years, we need the money, we need to get it back.
Yeah, you can stop because the money is not locked in. In the old days, which means before December the 8th, 2020, the monies contributed to your plan were locked in by pension legislation. Since then, because you own your company, you don't have locking in anymore. So if you needed access to your money, you would have access to it.
I know,
Well, it'd be,
penalty or-
it's not a penalty, it's just it's taxable, just like if you collapse an RRSP and you took the money out of an RRSP, it becomes taxable. Same thing with the pension plan. But it's not a
Can I ask
penalty.
a question?
Yes,
This is Elena not on video, on audio. Let's say you put in, by the time it grows, as you have in your chart, what happens if you die prematurely? Where does that money go?
well, it goes first to a spouse. If you have a spouse, there's a rollover of all that pension money to the spouse. So it's called a pre-retirement death benefit. And if you don't have a spouse or your spouse dies with you in the same car accident, then it goes to your designated beneficiaries on record. So
And what do they get though? Do they get the full tax-free amount? Like, what is it that they get?
no, it's kind of like an RSP. So they get an amount payable out of the pension plan. And it's under section 56 of the Income Tax Act. It's taxable in the hands of the recipient. So that's why I
But
said,
it's in a corporation that now is no longer a professional corp. So how does that play out?
but it's not in the corporation, it's in the pension fund, which is separate and apart from the assets of the corporation. It's sitting in its own trust, a pension trust that's tax exempt. But when the pension trust pays monies to beneficiaries, whatever is received by each beneficiary is included in the income of those beneficiaries.
So you're saying that even though the money to fund this CPPP is from the corporation has no interest in it?
That's right. It's contributed to the plan for the benefit of the beneficiaries, which of course is the doctor, but if the doctor dies, the spouse, and if there's no spouse, the children, or whoever else you name.
So is it automatically the spouse or?
Yeah, it's automatically the spouse, but we can have a spouse waive and say, I'd like to go to my children, and because as a spouse, I'm well looked after. I've got other monies, I've got insurance. So you can have a waiver of the pre-retirement death benefit. So it bypasses the step of the spouse and it goes straight to the beneficiaries.
So do you have dollar examples of how that works, depending on how much somebody contributes over the years, let's say for the next 10 years, next 20 years, whatever, and it grows within the plan, and then they die before they're, either they've taken a year or two out, or they die and everything else is left in there.
Yep, so corporation pays no tax.
And is there a requirement to take a certain minimum out like you have with RSPs?
Well, at 71, you do have to start taking something out of the pension plan. Just like RSPs with the RIF minimum, the same rule applies to the PPP. But before that, if there's a death, all the capital that's accumulating tax deferred inside the trust, which remember is not an asset of the company, is separate and apart, that goes first to the spouse on a rollover basis. And if there's no spouse, it goes to the designated beneficiaries on record.
And they have to pay tax at their tax rates as the money comes out.
Correct. So the children, let's say the children of the beneficiaries, they would have to recognize whatever the plan paid them, include into their taxable income for that year.
So the main difference between an RSP contribution and this one is that you can make the contributions out of your corporation, but otherwise it functions similarly to an RSP. In other words, the money that's in there accumulates tax-free, but when it comes, so it's very similar to an RSP, but the main benefit from what I'm hearing is that the money that's used is pre-tax, in effect, pre-tax dollars from the corporation. Is that right?
Yeah, that's conceptually, that's right. It's very similar to the RSP in that sense.
Okay.
So it's pre-tax money, growing tax sheltered. And you know, it's really interesting because you could name a charity like Princess Margaret Hospital Foundation could be a beneficiary of your pension plan. So it starts in the company, first OHIP pays it, doesn't get taxed by the professional corporation. Corporation takes this pre-tax money, puts it in the pension plan, it will grow for X number of years, no tax. And on death, because Princess Margaret is tax exempt, they don't have to pay tax on that money either. So it never gets taxed. So that's a kind of a odd example, but that's one way in which the money can flow. Typically, you don't name it.
That's exactly the way an RSP works as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. So this is why it's like I said, it's very similar to the RSP in that sense, except that because we're allowed to put significantly more money, there's a gap that develops between those two strategies.
So how much are you allowed to put in every year?
It'll depend on whether or not we're recognizing past service, whether what your age is, what your salary is, whether or not there are special payments, whether you trigger terminal funding. There's all kinds of ways to bump up the annual contributions that are tax deductible.
Okay, thank you.
No, no problem.
JP.
Yeah.
there's a question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
In terms of the maximum amount, I understand it. But what's the maximum salary that you, of which the percentage can be calculated?
171,000 this year. Every year CRA bumps that up. So this year it's 171. That's when you max out your contributions.
And then Miriam had talked about taking money early, so can you say, okay, 5 years from now, I need to pause, I can't make any more contributions, and some catastrophic thing happens, and I need a bit of that money. Can you withdraw it without triggering the pension? Like,
Yes.
or what, like, kind of once you start taking it out?
So you always retain the power, the corporate power to collapse the plan. It's called winding up. So you as the shareholder or president, director of your own corporation, pass a resolution that says this plan is terminated.
Okay.
So now we have to disperse the money, right? There's no pension anymore because we kill the plan. So now you have access to your money.
But then say 2 years later, you can start contributing again.
Well, in that case, what I would do is I would. So it depends. There might be surplus, for example, on the plan. You can always pull out surplus at any time. We can amend the benefits to create surplus, reduce the promised pension that creates surplus. It's not really designed to be a savings, like a ready access checking account, right? You can stop making contributions. You can ignore contributions. So if cash flow is tight, you don't have to put money in. Even if there's an opportunity to do special payments, you can ignore those. You can withdraw money from the plan as well, but it's not designed to be a ready source of cash, right? That's what TFSAs and other, yeah. Sorry, did you have another question before? Okay. Mhm.
So with the children, they have to be an employee.
For the tax-free, if they're not part of your plan because they were never on the payroll, they still get the money as a beneficiary, but it's taxable in their hands. Whereas in the other one, it's surplus, so it's not taxable.
Would that apply? So can you roll it over to anybody who's an employee of the company who's on file?
Well, you could, but then it gets more complicated because you're mixing what we call connected persons, like you are a shareholder of your own company. So you're connected to your medical professional corporation. That's why we have all these amazing rules that says there's no locking in, there's no need to contribute, right? Because you're a connected person. If you give access to a non-connected person to your pension plan, technically you could, but then the whole thing is governed by the Pension Benefits Act. So you have to make contributions, you have to fund it, the money is locked in. So it's just an administrative nightmare to do it that way. It's possible, but not recommended. Pardon me?
Why is that different?
Because children are by blood, they're deemed to own the same.
My mom works.
Mom is fine, because she's connected. Yeah, but not like, let's say you have a key employee that's on the pay. You can, but I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah. Yeah, for mom, no problem. She's connected. Yeah, it can go to her. Yeah, so she'll have all your money with no tax. Question, and then the gentleman there.
Good question here. So RSPs, let's say the max per year is whatever, 29,000 or so.
Yeah.
So under the right circumstance, certain age, people are a little older, they're making up 170 and up. What would, they could put up into what? 40?
About 18,000 at 64.
Right.
That's where the gap is the largest.
Right.
So that's about an extra $18,000 on top of the RSP max.
You're looking at 47, 48,000.
Yeah, this year, it keeps going
So
up.
that's what the gap is. If you can put in 40, 45, 48 instead of 29, you stand to make.
Well, yeah, it's not because you're smarter with your investments. We assume the exact same rate of growth, whether you're in RSP or CPPP, we use the same rate of growth, but because you're able to put more, you end up with a gap.
Sorry.
So my question is that was, if that's right, are there any penalties and fees you have to pay if you were to close it down and withdraw it or something?
There's a one-time $2,800 wind-up fee if you shut down the whole thing, because we have tons of paperwork to file with the government.
But no one retains that amount of principal.
No, it's your money.
And to offshoot to that, if supposedly happens unlikely to Integris itself, what happens to the money in terms of?
Oh, that's a great question. For those online, what happens if one of the Russian nuclear bombs falls on Integris and wipes out the whole company? What happens to my pension plan? Nothing happens because the money is not with us. The money's sitting with the custodian, right? Fidelity Clearing. The investment management is someone else. Sorry, oh, I thought this was plugged in. The investment management is with someone else. We're not managing the assets. The plan itself is registered with the government. So if you said, I don't like this PPP, I want to turn it into a different kind of thing, you can amend it and change it. You can wind it up like we talked about before. So we're nuclear proof. Your money is not at risk. That's the beauty of it. We've engineered it that way.
So neither JP or me are managing your money.
Yeah.
It's CI, it's Vector Global.
So what happens with the money that already is in your RRSP?
Well, you can transfer it into the CPPP. And now the management fees, which you were paying under your RSP, which were non-deductible, those same fees, because it's now a pension, become tax deductible.
Moving forward, but not retroactive.
No, I wish we could retro, but no.
So can I ask another question?
Yes, please.
You say everything is being invested by CI, so they make their investment fees and all that. Where do you get your fees? I mean, obviously you've done a tremendous amount of work and getting this registered and so on. So where do your fees come from?
Yeah, well, it's coming up in the next slides, but we charge an annual fee, a flat fee, which is $2,800 per year. It's tax deductible. And then we have a credit system where, because the portfolio managers are grateful for us sending them business, they send us a referral fee. And that referral fee allows us to reduce the client's annual fees by 25% over a 4-year schedule.
So that's the corporate a deduction at the corporate level.
That's a corporate deduction, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let's switch to more goodies in terms of the CPPP. We can not only invest with these great portfolio managers like CI and all that, but we can also use some of the money to invest in whole life insurance. Right? I don't know if you guys are all familiar, if you already have a permanent life insurance policy, you may or may not, but what's great about permanent life insurance is that it provides a safe and stable investment because the insurance company is the ones that investing the money, and it's kind of like a guaranteed amount. It's not.
So we're talking particularly about the participating
Whole life, yeah.
Okay, so the participating is you're participating in the carrier's portfolio. So if it's Sun Life, you're participating in Sun Life investment. If it's Canada Life, then you're participating in so you're essentially getting Sun Life dividends, or you're getting Canada Life dividend or Manulife dividend. That's what
Yeah.
that participating means.
Yeah, and they've been paying those dividends for what, 100 years,
120.
120 years without fail. So even through the wars, so that's why I mean by guaranteed. But the good thing about life insurance is that not only is there an account that's building up in value, there's also a death benefit on top. So the insurance company has to pay the death benefit if there's a death. And that's kind of like extra money that you're not earning when you're just investing in stocks and bonds, right? So, so that's why we think that as an asset class, using permanent life insurance is a good way of diversifying because it has nothing to do with the stock market, right? If you die and Sun Life pays $2 million to the pension fund, that has nothing to do with the stock market, how things are what's happening in the market. It's just a function of life insurance. And so these are just some of the dividend scales paid by, I can't remember which carrier we use for this. Is that Sun Life or Canada?
This is
Manulife? Yeah, so you can see what they were paying as part of the dividend on those policies as compared to the Toronto Stock Exchange Index in those years. So again, we've got our CPPP set up. We've got money in there. But then some of the contributions are used as premiums for a whole life participating policy. And it comes with a death benefit of $5 million on the side.
as an example.
As an example, it could be 2 million, could be 10 million, depends on how large the premium is and your age and your health condition and whatever underwriting is done by the carrier. So if should something happen to you, the $5 million in this case is added to the 3 million inside the plan. Life insurance is tax-free in Canada. So you've got $8 million now to pass to your children that are part of the plan. So a nice little bonus. So it's really a way of creating a long-term family pension that's going to be growing tax sheltered. I said, sorry, everyone, we had a technical glitch here at the office and now we have juice. So hopefully we can keep going.
Yeah, you can skip this one.
Yeah.
And skip the next one. It's just 2 slides with mathematical calculation of the same concept, but.
Yeah, so
it's just the concept that's
just for the lawyers on the call, it's not that we've found a way of making life insurance giving you a tax deduction. It's tax deductible because it's contributed by the corporation to the pension fund. And now that it's sitting in the pension fund, the pension fund trustees can use that pre-tax money to purchase life insurance. So just to make sure that there's no confusion here.
Is that in the defined 29% contribution or
No,
that's over and above?
No, that's within, remember we had that 50,000?
Yeah.
Well, that 50,000 was already calculated. It's just that, how do we allocate the 50,000? You can skip this one too.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a surplus.
Who would get your pension fund rolled over to them, which then we could take out on a yearly basis.
Based on their plan.
Based on their pension.
Yeah.
But what about that life insurance? Or like the amount where you're insured
It's
for?
inside the pension.
But would they not be able to take that out tax free?
No, it's inside the pension. So when they take it out, they will be taxed at their pension, but the entire money goes into the pension. That gets taxed. When they take it out, they'll be taxed at the cash that they withdraw.
So is it like this again?
You want to answer that?
Yes.
We have an answer for that.
Yes. So on paper, it looks right. Like I'd rather get $1 million tax free than having $1 million put into my pension plan. And then when it comes out, I have to pay tax on it, right? The problem is this, We don't know when that's gonna happen. So if death occurs when you're young, if I have $1 million in a pension plan that's gonna be growing tax-free from age 20 to age 70 or whenever I start paying taxes on it, there's gonna be significantly more money than if I received $1 million tax-free. And now for the next 50 years, I have to invest it in taxable accounts. Right? So it's, I wish I could draw it on the board, but you'd see it makes a huge difference. Oh, you gotta. Yeah, so it's the time value of money.
So you got 1 million that you can give to the person. Tax-free, okay? But let's say that person died here and the person receiving it is only 25 years old. Well, now they got 1 million tax-free, but they're not gonna sit on 1 million. They're not gonna put it in their pillowcase. They're gonna invest it. Well, they're gonna invest it in a non-reg account.
Taxable for the next 50 years.
So this million, when it grows, it'll be fully taxed. Okay. Whereas that same million goes into the pension, which grows tax-free. And it's only taxed when they take it out.
And only in what you pull out, not the
And
whole
not the
capital.
whole million.
We have to now have it on form. We don't want to keep it forever.
You could,
So we need to pay the tax at the end, not.
right, but you don't have to take a whole million out.
You
So,
pay tax on what you pull out,
and
what you need, not the whole thing.
And there's also something we didn't talk about, he kind of talked about. But the pension can go to my children, right?
Yeah.
But it can also go to my grandchildren.
Well, only if they're on the payroll.
I'm assuming they are. And it can go to my great grandchildren and so on and so on and so on.
How does that work?
It becomes a regular corporation. When you cease to practice medicine, you change the charter, you go to the College of Physicians and Surgeons, and you say, I'm no longer doing medicine. My corporation is going to be converted into a regular corporation, either a Canada Business Corporation or Ontario. And then doesn't matter who's a shareholder because you're not restricted by the college.
So just to simplify what that meant. An MPC is a 1, 2, 3, 4 Ontario Inc. that registered with the CPSO. That's all it is. If you look at your article of incorporation, it's actually not Dr. Veteran MPC, it's something Ontario Inc. Okay, so when I decide to no longer practice medicine at age 55, I'm gonna go to CPSO and say deregister me, and I stop paying my dues, and it becomes a 1, 2, 3 Ontario Inc. Now, in 1, 2, 3 Ontario Inc., I have my son and I have my daughter because they're employees. And this is just another corporation.
Yeah.
And they can, and my son could be a real estate agent, and so he can use the company. Or if my daughter's an architect, then she can use the company. Right? Because it's no longer an MPC, it's just a 1, 2, 3 Ontario.
I have a question regarding the annual fee we have to pay to you.
Yeah.
So let's suppose I have just 30,000 to put in CPPP. And I have to pay 0.5% to the institutions that I'm investing money, right?
Well, there's going to be either CI
Yeah.
or Vector Global.
Okay.
Yeah.
2,800 annually
To us.
to you, so that is 2% of
Your contribution.
the contribution.
Yeah.
So actually, none of the other
So
companies.
You wanna
are giving
finish the
2%
slide?
of the money, you are giving me 5.5%, and you are asking me to pay 10%.
no, you finish the slide.
Okay, so let's talk about pricing, because you just asked a question about pricing. So there are no setup fees, right? We waive those. There's a 4-year payment period, so you're only going to be paying for 4 years. Okay. And this is the schedule. So in year one, you pay 2,800, but by the end of year one, we reimburse you 25%. So you're only really paying net 23. By year two, at the end of year two, you're down to 1,582. By the end of year three, you're paying net after the reimbursement, 791. And after year four, you're not paying anything to us. Okay, so that's how we deal with that. So it's a little bit higher at the beginning, but then it tapers off and eventually disappears. Yeah.
So yes, it's annually if you did the PPP alone. So JP is also the CEO of Integra that does the PPP, which is the building block. This is the CPPP, which is the federation of these building blocks. And because of the economies of scale and because we're grouping our full money together, we can structure it so that after 4 years, the members pay money. Now, if you probably have colleagues who join an IPP, for example. Well, the IPP, they don't have a similar thing. They have to pay annually for the next 15, 16, 17 years, whatever. So to your point, yes, that's continuing. With us, after 4 years, we waive that.
Many of us, we go with investment, so we don't have, we don't have anything. So that's the reason I'm asking them, let me fair to give you, you know.
Remember that because you have access to 7 tax deductions that you otherwise don't have. Right? Past service, current service, RSP double dip, special payments, terminal funding, fee deductibility. All of that creates value that you didn't have before. That will be significantly more than $2,800.
No, I understand you pay for 4 years, but if you pay for 20 years.
Yeah, but even if it was 20 years, like PPP customers pay the full rate every year because all the tax deductions create tax savings, which you don't have with an RSP. So it covers it auto finances itself.
When you 500,000, you pay 2,800 years. But when you pay 50,000, when you pay 2,800 a year, it's not okay. So
You can look at it that way, but I'm gonna show you something.
but in 4 years, I am just.
It's
No, but
free
even if
anyway.
you were paying for 20, let's just say we pay for 20 years. Okay, and you multiply that by 5% in the market, and you compound that. Okay, so you compound that for 20 years. I'm gonna do that calculation and I'll show you, okay?
I have a question for everyone. So in order for eligibility for this pension plan, you really to change our corporation from professional to the regular corporation?
No, it's good now. This was a point about what happens to my children when you die and there's no more medicine. Yeah, that's like,
Because at the moment, you don't have relatives are, you know,
yeah, but you don't have to have it on the payroll. That's just an extra benefit of being able to pass your wealth without tax on death, which you don't have with the way you're doing it right now, which is keeping the money in the corporation or putting it in an RSP. In both those situations, on death, there's a deemed disposition, unless you can do a rollover to a spouse.
they can change their corporation.
Yeah, so that a medical professional corporation, when the doctor dies, we can change the corporation to a regular corporation and continue with the corporation. That's what Dr. Tran was saying. It's just a corporation. Just so happens that there are extra rules imposed by the college, making it a medical corporation. Yeah. So are you done with your math there?
I'm doing it.
So we're gonna have to say something because there's people online.
Oh, so, yeah, sorry. So if you take the 28,000,
2,800.
2,800 multiplied by 20 years, which is 56. But I didn't take, you didn't put 56 all at once. You put 2,800 year after year after year that you compound in the market at 5%. After 20 years, it's 100,000. So you could say my 2,800 that I'm paying is really, if I put it in the market I invested, compounded, is worth 100,000.
Are you missing a boiler there?
Nope.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, it's 200.
Because
Oh, it's 5%.
the last 2,800 in year 20 doesn't have much interest on it. And the year
And
before
by the
that,
way, I'm not taking this multiplied by 5%. I'm taking 2,800. Because you don't, you're paying 2,800 every year, you're not paying 56,000 every year. So you could say, if I took this money, I didn't give it to Integris. I took this money and I put it in the market at 5% for 20 years, compounded. This is how much I would get. So you could say, you could use another calculator. I use the MD Growth calculator.
It's not for them.
yeah, it's the
It's
last
once a year,
2,800
5%.
contributed only grows at 5% for 1 year.
For 20
In
years.
year 19, it grows for 2 years at 5%. So there's not a lot of interest towards the end of the projection. Yeah.
I use the MD management growth calculator. Okay, so if I, instead of giving 2,800 to JP, I put 2,800 and I put it in some ETF at 5% every year growth for 20 years.
No, I don't think you understand. Let's suppose I have just 50,000 to put in the CPP. Now,
Yes.
if I pay 2,800 a year
Yes,
for you to manage
yes.
this money, you know, in 10 years, if you don't, I'll get just 40% of it.
You're missing something.
No,
You're missing something. So do you happen to know what kind of tax your corporation is paying? Are you at 12.2%?
Yeah.
Okay. So 50,000 is what you contribute to the plan. But because you contributed, you get a deduction.
Yeah, I know that.
So that means that your corporation has saved $6,100 that year. Minus our fee, 2,800. So your net after paying us 3,300.
No, this is the one, the first year. I don't pay 1,200, 200 every year, 12% on that money. I pay once if I leave the money in the corporation.
No, but the next year you're gonna make money. So the next $54,000 that you put in the plan will give you another.
No, I just said, let's suppose I have just 50,000, one big lump sum to give it to you for the CPP.
for this year.
And
What
that's
about
it.
next year?
But it's not designed to be a one-time. If that's what you, that's not-
Design of it.
yeah,
If that was the case, don't do this.
don't do that. Yeah.
Don't do this.
You put a mix of a bond actually, pay every year 2,800 is not a capital, but if you pay more, then it's a bigger capital.
Yeah, it's not designed for a one payment and then for 30 years.
I understand what
Yeah.
you're saying, but what JP is saying is, if you didn't put that 50,000, remember you gave the example of 200,000. If you didn't put that 50,000, you'd be taxed at 200,000 times 12%. By doing this, you're saving $6,000.
So minus our fee, you're still ahead. So that's why it auto finances itself every year.
No, it's after 4 years. you don't pay.
Well, that too, that's on top, that's gravy on top. But I was explaining that even other clients that don't have that benefit still do it because it generates so much value with the tax savings that it covers our fees anyway.
Because remember, his other clients are not offering. His other clients are not doing the CPPP. So even his other clients who is not getting this 4-year deduction are still doing it.
Yeah, it's, or else people wouldn't sign up. Okay, so getting started. Well, we always start with a complimentary illustration because we want to know what your numbers are. Yeah, I think we lost some. Must be. one.
Everybody logged off from online, not sure what happened.
Okay. Well, it's being recorded, so we'll send them the 2 segments and they won't miss this part. So we start with an illustration because we want to know how much can you contribute for past income if you had salaries in the past. We want to know how much we want to do from now into the future. We want to see all those tax deductions. What is that worth in terms of tax savings? And then we want to know what you can expect in retirement because it's a formula. So that helps with financial planning. And of course, if there are spouses or children to add to the plan, then we'd like to quantify that as well, because then you can see how much more is saved should disaster occur. So there's a lot more. I mean, we can't cover everything in a introductory webinar, but so the best way is to visit us and to speak with our facilitators. Like it was Stephen is sitting in the back of the room. His email is here. But if you just go on the site, there's a little I think most of you might have used it, where you can say contact me, put your phone number or your email address, and Stephen will be in touch and start collecting the information to produce an illustration. And that's the website. And just wrapping up, this is one of Dr. Tran's favorite saying, everyone deserves a pension. Well, now it's possible. Now it's possible for physicians to have their own pension. It's too bad that the Canadian Medical Association didn't create one in the last 100 years. It's a big letdown. I know. Oh, well. Someone got paid a bonus, just not you. So it's heartbreaking, but it's okay.
What is the minimum amount to sell?
Minimum amount of what? Salary?
Yeah.
Like I said, there's no real minimum. We say you should at least have like $60,000 to $70,000 of salary paid by your corporation.
That you guys don't require a minimum amount, right?
Of
I'm
assets?
already paying myself a salary, whatever I'm doing, you're gonna.
Yeah, what JP is saying is if you're paying yourself less than 60,000.
60,000.
If you're paying yourself less than, it's not worth paying us 2,000.
Yeah.
That's what it's,
Even though that thing disappears,
Yeah.
it's not really,
it's not worth it.
well,
And then, if I'm paying myself, just to use a round number, 100,000, and the amount that can be paid out is 20,000. I pay myself 100,000, and then the corporation pays me 20,000, or I pay myself 80,000 and you pay 20,000.
So your corporation, if you're paying yourself 100,000 in salary,
Yeah.
your corporation is making more than that.
Yeah, right.
So let's just say your corporation is making 200.
Right.
You pay 20 to the pension.
Okay.
That leaves you 180.
Okay.
Out of that 180, you pay yourself 100.
Okay.
And then your corporation is left with 80.
Yeah.
And it gets taxed at 80.
Yeah.
Because the corporation takes the contribution.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the beauty of it, right?
Yeah.
So the beauty is the corporation pays for your pension.
okay.
All the benefits, all the, like the contributions for previous year, how you determine what year you're gonna sort of retire, and what it makes financial sense, is this all advice that you give us as part of your annual fee that we pay you, like you give us guidance in terms of like how to
Yes.
approach this and do
So-
your
So I don't know if you,
planning, so to speak?
I don't know where you are with the process. Thank you. So when you get an initial illustration, right?
So I
You
got
get
the
an
usual
initial-
illustration.
Well, that illustration tells you age 45, age 55, age 60, 65, et cetera, right? It tells you all that. And then once you finally sign on and say, I want to join as a CPPP member, they give you an official full detailed.
So we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there.
But once you get that, every year, again, if you have taxation questions, you ask your accountant, your accountant will ask you for sure. And JP will ask you. Integris will answer them. You will work with your financial planner, right, if you have one. And your financial planner will have questions about pension. They'll call Integris, you call Integris will also deal with them.
Yeah,
And if you're,
your knowledge, your knowledge base is more than my, like, accountant. like,
no, so
based on this.
so we will deal with your accountant.
Okay, so, but are you going to be giving us sort of guidance, like proactively, or are you
Yes.
gonna wait for me to say, hey?
No.
what do I do now?
So what did you do with one of your clients when the market dropped in March?
Yeah, so give you an example of proactive. So in, when the COVID hit in 2020, the stock market over a month lost about 30%. So what we did, we didn't wait for clients to call us. We checked with the actuaries and we said, hey, if we were to measure the health of our clients' pension plans now, based on these low market values, how much more money could they put in the form of special payments? Right? So we did all the calculations for all the clients. We contacted them and said, hey, would you like another $100,000 deduction this year? We can do a special payment. And they said, no, I don't have the cash, or yeah, I had a great year. Let's put it in. So that's an example of us being proactive. Yeah.
So now that I've signed up, I've given all my numbers and stuff, I'm waiting for input now, I guess, on how to move forward.
So once you got everything, we give everything to, remember, Industrial Alliance?
Right,
They do all the calculation. It comes to JP. JP reviews all that, make sure everything is good. And then there is a discussion between yourself and I think it's Nick now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's gonna be a discussion between you and Nick, who's on the line. And he's gonna go through the entire thing with you.
okay. That's good.
Because we know doctors are very busy.
And we don't know this.
Plus, we don't do very good with numbers.
Still bad.
Well, it's not just that. This is more complicated than just that, right? As you can understand.
Yeah.
There's many levels of taxation. Right? So.
Yeah. Question. Oh,
Question about down the line, say I think it for 10 years, and then I decide to leave Canada for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But and become a non-resident, I have a permanent or temporary, but I haven't retired and I don't want to start paying myself out of pension.
yeah, yeah,
Can the money just?
yeah.
stay
It just stays in the plan. Nope.
One day if it comes out, or don't hold the Canada, I say, I want my pension out, it starts.
Yeah.
When you trigger it.
Not only that, there's another rule, which is called a departure tax. So departure tax is the last deemed disposition if you become a non-resident of Canada. And what they do is kind of like death. They say, oh, you left the country. We're going to measure all your assets at fair market value compared to what you paid for them, and the gain is going to be taxable. So if you've accumulated a lot of money in your company or in your non-registered savings account, tax. However, there is an exception to the rule, and that's what we call exempt assets. So RRSPs are exempt assets and PPPs are exempt assets. So if you were able to put $1 million in your PPP, you leave the country, you become a non-resident, no tax on the $1 million in your PPP.
What assets are taxed?
Everything else, like
Except if I'm resident, after being done with them.
I don't know. I'd have to check. I don't think so. I don't think it's taxed, but like if you own buildings, if you own real estate, if you own companies, if you own shares in the stock market, it's all taxable. But not exempt assets. But not with the PPP. The PPP is an exempt asset. So I could stay here all night talking about this stuff, but I know you guys have to go. So we're going to cap it off here, but I'm going to stick around another 10 minutes. So if anyone has any questions, please, but I'm going to let these people go.